I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are sitting in absolute, suffocating darkness. The kind of dark that feels, heavy on your skin. You're pressing yourself against a cold, jagged rock face inside a sprawling cavern.
Right, and the only sounds you hear are these guttural, terrifying chants of a horde of savages just echoing off the stone walls.
Exactly. You are hiding, and you're watching something horrific unfold. This is the world of chasing death. Today, we aren't just looking at a story of survival. We're doing a deep dive into the mechanics of absolute terror, a profound clash of faiths, and, well, what happens when the very laws of physics shatter inside a cannibalistic ritual.
It's such an intense setup. The author doesn't just put the characters in danger. They construct an environment designed to systematically dismantle their psychological defenses before the physical threat even manifests.
Yeah, we are looking at a really pivotal chapter today, the Cannibal's Cold Fire.
Yeah.
We're going to trace this architecture of tension from a claustrophobic cave all the way out into an endless existential desert. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. So the pacing here is a masterclass in atmospheric pressure.
It really is. I mean, let's look at how that dismantling begins. Our protagonist, Zayn, is hidden in the craggy shadows. He's watching this horde of cannibals drag in a woman named Asha.
And she's deathly pale, trembling, bound in heavy iron chains.
Right, her garments mark her as a noblewoman, but in this cave, she is just the next meal. And the ritual they perform isn't just about preparing food, it's weaponized theatricality.
Precisely. It's so calculated. The tribal chief approaches Asha, who is chained to a thick stone pillar. He uses a jagged knife, but he doesn't actually cut her.
Oh, right, he just cuts her hair.
Yeah, he severs a thick lock of her dark hair and flings it into the air. That highly specific action acts as a catalyst. It triggers the entire horde to erupt into these sky-shattering demonic chants.
It's terrifying.
They swirl around her, leaping as if possessed. It is raw psychological warfare. They are breaking her mind before they touch her body.
And it works. I mean, Asha is just squeezing her eyes shut, her lips quivering. Then the horde dances themselves into exhaustion.
The tension there is unbelievable.
The chief lets out a piercing shriek, and the cavern falls into absolute eerie silence. He opens his mouth to speak, and Zayn slips.
Oh, that moment.
A single loose stone breaks free, it tumbles downward and strikes the cavern floor with a sharp, ringing clatter.
If we analyze the sound design of this scene, that dropped stone is just devastating. You have this deafening, chaotic noise, followed by absolute silence, which is then shattered by the smallest, most consequential sound imaginable.
It's total auditory whiplash. The silence makes the tiny clatter of a pebble sound like a thunderclap. Every single head snaps toward the dark.
And they swarm the rocks instantly. Zayn is dragged out.
The chief actually laughs, this maniacal, triumphant laugh. He demands to know where Zayn came from, and then orders him chained up right beside Asha to be roasted and eaten at dawn as a blood offering.
And here's where the narrative shifts from physical terror to a deeply philosophical conversation. We get this quiet, desperate, whispered exchange in the dark.
Yeah, we learn Asha is the wife of a wealthy merchant from Mohenjo-Daro. Her caravan was ambushed, and her husband has already been devoured.
Horrific. And Zayn is a traveler fleeing from Babylon, but the introductions quickly give way to a massive theological clash.
It really is the central thematic pivot of the chapter. Asha is heartbroken and completely resigned to her fate. She says something like, "It was written in our fate that we would become their food."
Right, and when she laments that she cannot call upon her god, Amun, to save them, she isn't just expressing doubt, she's expressing a very specific, localized theology.
Yeah, because Zayn asks the obvious question. He says, if your deity has power, call him. And Asha's explanation is fascinating.
It is. She says Amun only helps if his followers enter his sacred temple, offer a sacrifice of sheep, and literally spill the blood upon his idol.
Without that exact ritual, in that exact location, Amun is entirely incapable of helping them. It's like Asha views her deity as being, well, geofenced.
Geofenced. That is an incredibly accurate way to describe ancient polytheistic frameworks. The gods were deeply tied to the land, to the city-state, or to the specific temple complex.
Think about how wild that concept is to modern sensibilities. And I want you, the listener, to consider this for a second. How often do we operate with geofenced belief systems in our own lives?
That's a great point.
The idea that your strength, your resources, or even your moral compass only functions if you are in the quote-unquote right environment. If you are outside your comfort zone, outside your temple, you are powerless.
And Asha is entirely trapped by this limitation. She doesn't even try to pray because her god's Wi-Fi doesn't reach the cannibal cave.
Exactly. So does Zayn's immediate rejection of this concept set the stage for the supernatural events to come.
Oh, absolutely. That framework establishes the baseline of what power means in this universe. When Zayn hears this, he is completely baffled. He asks, what kind of god is confined to four walls and powerless beyond them?
His rejection of her theology sets the rules of engagement for the rest of the narrative. Zayn confidently tells her he worships the one supreme Lord, infinitely great, before whom every deity and every atom of creation submits.
He doesn't hesitate at all. He has this quiet, unwavering certainty.
Asha, in her desperation, asks, "Will he help me too? I don't even worship him." And Zayn softly replies that the Supreme Lord is the Lord of all creation, equally the Lord of those who worship him and those who do not.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Zayn is offering a complete paradigm shift. Asha's worldview is transactional, blood for protection, and localized. Zayn's worldview is universal and unconditional.
Right,
He tells
right.
her rescue is undeniable. And he says this while shackled to a stone pillar in a slaughterhouse.
The atmospheric pressure is immense, and it explodes right at that moment. The guttural voices echo through the tunnels. The horde is coming back early.
Zayn immediately takes narrative control. He urgently whispers to Asha, pretend to lose consciousness. Fake a fainting spell right now.
Which, from a purely biological standpoint, is brilliant. It exploits the predatory instincts of their captors.
Exactly. Predators are stimulated by struggle. By telling Asha to play dead, Zayn is manipulating the cannibal's need for an active, conscious sacrifice.
I look at that and wonder how Asha even managed it. I mean, her every survival instinct must be screaming at her to stay alert.
But Zayn gives her this cryptic reassurance. He tells her, they will never be able to kill me. The source material explicitly notes that a profound shift happens within Zayn in that exact second.
A newly awakened certainty surges through him.
Right. He knows his extraordinary powers have returned, so she trusts his tone. She goes limp just as the frenzied cannibals leap into the chamber.
The chief sees the unconscious woman, dismisses her with a wave of his hand, and points directly at Zayn. He shall be roasted and eaten first.
The psychological manipulation worked perfectly.
It worked flawlessly. But it leads to the most terrifying scenario imaginable. The cannibals strike stones together. They build a roaring, fierce fire right there in the cavern.
The imagery is just so vivid.
They unbind Zayn, hurl him onto the rocky floor, stretch his limbs wide, and drive thick metal stakes deep into the ground. He is completely immobilized, and he offers zero resistance.
He becomes the perfect, willing sacrifice. The chief performs this grotesque theatrical dedication to their stone idol, bellowing for their dark deity to accept the offering.
The entire horde prostrates themselves in the dirt. It is the peak of their religious ecstasy.
The chief scrambles upright, hoists his massive spear high into the air, lets out a battle cry, and drives it downward with all his savage strength directly into Zayn's thigh.
I want you to really picture the mechanics of this tension. Asha is watching from under her lowered lashes, squeezing her eyes shut because she can't bear to see a man impaled.
The entire buildup relies on our fundamental understanding of physics. A heavy wooden spear, tipped with sharp stone or metal, driven by a muscular savage, will pierce human flesh.
But the sound she hears isn't flesh tearing, it's wood shattering.
The author isolates that sensory detail brilliantly. The very instant the spear strikes Zayn's flesh, the thick wooden shaft shatters into two useless pieces.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The chief is dumbfounded. He grabs a second spear, brings it crashing down on Zayn's other thigh with devastating force.
It snaps in half. The recoil shudders up the chief's arms like he'd just struck solid bedrock.
Driven to absolute madness, he takes a third spear, thrusts it savagely into Zayn's stomach. It splinters instantly. I have to point out the pacing here. Why 3 spears? Why not just one and then throw him in the fire?
Because 3 attempts dismantle the chief's reality step by step. The first shattered spear could be a fluke-like, maybe a rotten shaft. The second is an anomaly that creates panic.
Right.
The third confirms the impossible. We are witnessing a complete psychological break. His entire reality, his authority, his very understanding of the world is constructed around physical dominance and the tearing of flesh.
And faced with a man whose skin is harder than bedrock, his cognitive dissonance is absolute. He screams at his horde to rain your spears upon him.
It's sheer unadulterated panic. The horde pounces. They drive their weapons down on Zayn from every direction.
And before their eyes, every single spear snaps and clatters uselessly to the cavern floor. The man-eaters stumble back in paralyzed shock.
The physical laws of their universe have just been suspended.
So the chief resorts to his final, most terrifying option, the primal element. Throw him into the fire.
They hoist Zayn up, still wrapped in heavy iron chains, and hurl him into the heart of the blazing inferno. Towering flames swallow him whole.
The wild men celebrate, dancing in a roaring circle. Because fire is the ultimate equalizer. Fire doesn't care if your skin is hard. Fire consumes.
They are absolutely certain Zayn has been reduced to ash.
But when they use long poles to scatter the burning logs and coals, the celebration dies instantly. Every throat in that cavern erupts in a shriek of pure terror.
The flames part, and there is Zayn.
He's still wrapped in his iron chains, just reclining on the glowing bed of coals with an expression of utter, undisturbed calm. Not a single mark of burning on his skin or his clothes.
The detail that truly anchors this supernatural event isn't actually the unburnt skin, it's the chains. The chief reaches out a trembling hand to touch the heavy iron binding Zayn.
And the metal is completely, impossibly cold.
What's fascinating here is that if Zayn merely had a high pain tolerance or some mystical shield, the iron would still absorb the ambient heat of the inferno. The cold iron proves that reality itself has been altered around him. The raging inferno was simply denied permission to burn.
The cold iron in the heart of the fire, it's such a jarring, brilliant image. The chief shudders, collapses to his knees, and presses his forehead into the dirt.
He is suddenly and absolutely convinced that Zayn is a living deity. The whole horde throws themselves face down.
And Asha, still chained to the pillar, is spellbound. The god she thought was geofenced is nothing compared to a man who treats a bonfire like a lounge chair.
At the chief's frantic order, they free Zayn. The text explicitly notes that he steps out from the glowing embers as one might step out of a shallow pool.
The lack of urgency is what terrifies them the most. Now Zayn has all the power, and he seizes control of the situation with incredible tactical cunning.
Yeah, he doesn't act relieved to be alive. He leans into their terror.
He feigns this thunderous, imperious fury. He glares down at the groveling savages and thunders. "You wretched cannibals, I have watched your every vile act in silence. I will burn every last one of you to ashes in this very fire."
He adopts the exact persona of the wrathful god they already fear. When they beg for mercy, his immediate, non-negotiable command is for Asha's release.
They unlock her instantly and she rushes to his side. But then the scene takes a really dark turn. Asha points a trembling finger at one specific savage in the dirt.
She tells Zayn, "That man, he is the one who shoved my husband into the fire first."
Zayn's gaze hardens. He turns to the cowering chief and says, "If you wish to spare your tribe from my full vengeance, then seize that murderer and cast him into the fire yourself."
And the chief executes the order with cold, brutal efficiency. He grabs the screaming man, breaks his neck, stabs him, and hurls the body into the flames.
Wait, I struggle with this part, though. Zayn demands the murderer be thrown into the fire. Is this actually a moment of divine justice-like, balancing the cosmic scales for Asha's murdered husband? Or is Zayn running a ruthless psychological op to force the chief to turn on his own men?
It is functionally both, but the psychological brilliance cannot be overstated. By forcing the chief to act as the executioner, Zayn is employing a classic burn the ships strategy.
I see.
He is making the chief complicit in violence against his own tribe on Zayn's behalf. This completely severs any remaining tribal solidarity against Zayn.
The cheese is now entirely subjugated.
Exactly. He has offered a blood sacrifice to Zayn. This ensures the cannibals won't regroup and attack them the moment they turn their backs to leave the cave.
It is completely Machiavellian, and it neutralizes the threat permanently. Zayn then demands 2 horses' magnificent Arabian thoroughbreds looted from Asha's caravan.
And the trembling chief leads them through a labyrinth of secret winding tunnels.
And we have to talk about the sensory transition here. We are moving from the suffocating blackness, the smoke, and the localized terror of the cave to the passage suddenly opening up and the blinding vast light of the sun pouring over them.
They emerge on sandy ridges at the edge of a sprawling desert. The relief for the reader and the characters is palpable. The claustrophobia breaks.
But Zayn knows they need direction. He asks the chief where this endless desert leads.
The chief, still shaking, says that if they ride steadily eastward for 6 days and 6 nights, they will reach a land where people worship a great buffalo.
Asha realizes immediately he's talking about her homeland, Mohenjo-Daro. Zayn dismisses the chief, the horde collapses into prostration in the sand, and Zayn and Asha gallop away into the endless dunes.
This transition is where the narrative shifts its thematic focus. We leave behind the hyper-concentrated, acute terror of the cave. The threat was immediate, violent, and highly visible.
Right.
Now they enter the vast, exposed vulnerability of the desert where the threat is chronic, silent, and existential.
And as they ride out into that vastness, Asha asks the question that we are all wondering. How did he survive the fire?
Zayn just gives her a warm smile and says his Supreme Lord protected him.
Which triggers a profound transformation in Asha. She looks at him with deep reverence and pledges her faith to his Supreme Lord. And she delivers this incredibly striking realization.
It's one of my favorite lines.
She says, after seeing true power, why should I cling to those useless stone idols, idols who do not even possess the strength to swat the flies from their own faces?
That is a devastating critique of her former worldview. The juxtaposition is brilliant. You have the image of a massive stone idol that cannot even brush a fly away from its nose, compared to a man walking out of a raging inferno with cold iron chains.
It's undeniable.
Her conversion isn't just an emotional reaction to being saved, it is intensely logical. It is based on the undeniable empirical evidence she has just witnessed. She is realigning her understanding of physics and divinity.
It's an awakening. But what I find fascinating is that even with this new, logically sound, unshakable faith, the narrative doesn't let us relax.
No, not at all.
The dark cave is behind them, but a new, subtle sense of dread looms over the desert. The environment is bright and open, but they are just as trapped.
Exactly. Because the nature of their trial has evolved. Escaping the acute crisis of the cave doesn't mean the struggle is over. It just means the parameters of survival have changed.
3 days pass in the blazing sun. There is no carved path, no landmarks.
Asha admits that the dunes look utterly foreign to her. She can't even tell if they're on the right route. The adrenaline has completely worn off.
Right, for the next 2 days, they are surviving on sparse, bitter desert herbs. They are exhausted, hungry, and baking in the sun.
They are driven forward solely by Zayn's unwavering certainty. If the Supreme Lord wills it, we will reach our destination, he says.
The environment has completely changed, but the requirement for absolute faith remains. And honestly, this might be the harder test.
It absolutely is. Surviving a moment of spectacular supernatural intervention is one thing. Maintaining that faith during days of monotonous, grueling, unglamorous starvation is another entirely.
Yeah.
If we synthesize what this source material is really showing us, it's a masterclass in contrasting absolute powerlessness with absolute agency, and then testing that agency against the slow grind of reality.
In the dark cavern, Asha in her chains represented the ultimate lack of control. Her geography, her captors, her very theology trapped her.
And Zayn, reclining in the fire, represented ultimate agency, entirely unbound by the physical laws of the world.
So what does this all mean? Out in the desert, Zayn's powers aren't conjuring feasts out of thin air. They still have to eat bitter herbs. The supernatural gives way to the grueling mundane.
Right.
I want you to really think about how this applies beyond just a fantasy survival story. Think about how extreme atmospheric pressure cookers like. Being trapped in a pitch-black cave surrounded by literal monsters, or wandering through an endless desert strip away our polite inherited beliefs.
It really does. Asha only realized her idol was useless when she was pushed to the absolute edge of existence and forced to compare it to real power. Pressure reveals what we truly put our faith in.
This raises an important question. What happens when our own localized, geofenced coping mechanisms are suddenly out of range?
Often, the external fires we are thrown into or the deserts we are forced to cross are exactly the mechanisms required to burn away our comfortable illusions.
And speaking of illusions, I want to leave you with a final, lingering mystery to ponder tonight. We watched Zayn sacrifice himself to the spears and the flames to save Asha.
The ultimate sacrifice.
He offered himself up to be the first victim, taking the brunt of the savagery. But remember the text. He already knew his cowards had returned. He knew with absolute certainty that he was invulnerable before the first spear was ever thrown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he did.
So here's the question. If you are entirely certain you cannot be harmed, if you know the iron will remain cold and the wood will shatter, is stepping into the roaring fire a true act of bravery? Or is it simply a theatrical display of inevitable triumph? Think about that the next time you strike a match.